I've been on enough search calls to know the woods usually give people back for simple reasons. They get turned around, they leave the trail too late in the day, and panic when the light starts going down. They slip and sprain their ankle crossing wet rock, break a wrist on a fall, lose phone signal, and make one bad decision after another. Because cold and fear narrow the world down to whatever feels most urgent in that moment. Most of the time, when we find them, they're dehydrated, embarrassed, and angrier at themselves than anything else. That's the version people like. It lets them believe the woods are fair. You make a mistake, the woods punish it. If somebody gets hurt, there's a reason. A chain of bad choices. Something you can point to later in a parking lot while folding maps over the hood of your truck and say, that was where it went wrong. The search for Emma Voss was the first time I came out of the trees feeling like the reason had been there before we arrived. She was 16, last seen a little after 5 near the North Trailhead at Black Pine State Forest, about 20 minutes outside town. Her mother said she had gone out there after a fight at home, which already told us more than most calls did. Teenager, upset, familiar front trails, unfamiliar back sections, phone going straight to voicemail by 6:30. That usually meant one of two things. Either she didn't want to be found yet, or she'd gotten hurt somewhere she thought she could handle. By the time I reached the command post, it was fully dark. The sheriff's department had set up in the gravel overflow lot near the ranger station. Floodlights washed the tree line in hard white glare, and turned everybody beyond it into cutouts and shadow. 2 deputies, 1 ranger, our volunteer search and rescue team, and Emma's parents standing by the back of a county SUV with both doors open. Her mother had her arms folded tight across her stomach like she was trying to hold herself together physically. Her father was answering questions too fast, as if speed alone could get his daughter back sooner. I signed in on the hood of a truck, took a radio, and looked over the sector map while Wade Harlan brought me up to speed. Wade had been running search operations in 3 counties longer than some of our younger volunteers had been driving. Former deputy, thick-necked, slow-spoken, never theoretical. The kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice because he'd spent most of his life around people who only listened when they had to. Last confirmed sighting was here, he said, tapping the map near the old fire road loop. Girl parked at the north lot around 4:30. Another hiker saw her heading in alone. Family says she knows the front trails, not the back sections. Phone pinged once near marker 7, then nothing. I studied the map. The front trails were easy enough, maintained, marked, forgiving. But beyond the loops, Black Pine opened into rougher country. Old fire breaks, runoff gullies, deadfall. Remnant logging cuts from before the state cleaned up the place for public access. Not wilderness exactly, but enough uneven ground to lose daylight and judgment in a hurry. "What's the temperature doing?" I asked. 36 now, dropping below freezing before midnight. I nodded. Cold enough to matter. Not die in minutes cold, but bad enough for a teenager dressed for an afternoon walk and not a long night outside. Wade handed me a laminated grid sheet pointed toward the K-9 team. "You're with me, Lena, and Keller." Keller was one of our newer volunteers, late 20s maybe, good in training, eager in the way some people are when they still think effort can compensate for time. Solid over rough ground, quick with directions, talked a little too much when things got tense. Lena Ortiz was the opposite. Quiet, economical, all business once her harness came out. She handled COA, a black and tan shepherd mix with enough real search hours behind him that I trusted his reactions more than most people's first instincts. By 8:15 we were moving. Our lights cut through the first stretch of trail in clean white cones that flattened roots, bushes, and low branch into harsh islands of detail. Beyond them, the woods stayed what woods always are at night: depth without shape, empty-looking spaces between trunks that stopped feeling empty the moment you pointed light into them. The air had that late autumn stillness where every sound came back cleaner than it should. Boots and leaves, gear shifting on straps, breath through fabric. Somewhere farther off, water moving over stone. At first, it was a standard search. Call-outs every few minutes. Pause. Listen. Koa worked at the trail edge with his nose low and body taut, pulling Lena gently side to side where the brush crowded close. We found the usual useless signs people always want to mean something when they're sacred older shoe impressions: a crushed can near a branch, a broken branch at shoulder height that could have been a deer, a kid, or nothing at all. Nothing fresh enough to help. We passed marker 7 around 8:40. That was where her phone had last registered. The trail narrowed there and bent along a shallow drainage channel slick with leaves and stone. Beyond it, the maintained path kept left, but an older service road, mostly abandoned now, except by deer, teenagers, the occasional ranger truck, cut off through the trees toward the backside of the forest. Koa stopped so suddenly his harness strap went taut. Lena stopped with him. The rest of us did too. At first I thought he'd picked up the scent hard. His head came up, ears forward, body angled toward the dark line of timber along the old road. Then he made a sound I'd only heard from trained dogs a handful of times. Not a bark, a low, uncertain whine. Lena crouched beside him. "Come on, boy." Koa didn't move. His hackles had risen all along his shoulders. He leaned back against the harness instead of forward, nails digging into leaf litter as if something ahead of him could be felt through the ground, and he wanted no part of it. Wade stepped closer. "What's he got?" Lena kept one hand against Koa's chest and looked toward the road disappearing between the trees. "I don't know," she said, "but he doesn't want to go in there." Nobody said anything for a good second. Search dogs aren't mythical. They're animals with training, not omens. They refuse things for reasons: terrain, wildlife, contamination, injury, noise. But Koa wasn't distracted, and he wasn't confused. He was scared. That landed differently. Wade swept his light down the old road. It had probably been gravel once, but runoff and leaf fall had almost swallowed it. 2 pale ruts, a strip of dark growth down the middle, branches low enough to rake a face if you weren't paying attention. "Could be a bear crossed through," Keller said. Lena shook her head. "If it was a bear, he'd tell me different." "What then?" She looked back at Koa, who gave another soft whine and pressed harder against her leg. I said I don't know. Wade clicked his radio. "Command, Team 2? We're at marker 7 near the old North Service Road. K9 has possible interest but is refusing direction. Holding position 1 minute." Static crackled, then dispatch answered in a woman's calm, practiced voice. "Copy, Team 2. Hold and advise." Wade lowered the radio and looked at me. I knew what he was really asking. Do we trust the dog, or do we trust the map? Because Emma's last phone ping and the terrain both said this road mattered. But standing there in the cold with Koa braced back against his harness, it didn't feel like an ordinary judgment call anymore. It felt like the first time that night the woods had offered an option. Then, from somewhere ahead in the trees, a girl's voice called for help. Not loud, not a scream. Thin, tired, just enough panic in it to cut straight through your chest if you were already listening for it. Keller turned so fast his light slashed across the trunks. "Emma?" Wade's arm came out across his chest before he could step. "Hold." We all listened. Nothing. No brush movement, no crashing feet, no second cry. Just the hush of the woods and the dry ticking sound branches make when the temperature drops another degree. Koa was trembling now. Not metaphorically. I felt it through the ground. The dog was shaking hard enough that the metal rings on his harness made a faint, repeating click. Lena said quietly, "That came from the road." Wade didn't answer. He was still looking into the trees, head tilted slightly, the way people do when they're trying to measure distance by ear and already know they don't trust what they heard. And then the voice came again. "Can somebody hear me?" This time it sounded farther in and higher up the slope. That was the first moment something in me shifted. Not fear, not yet. Just a clean, exact feeling that the night had moved 1 inch out of alignment, and everything after that was going to depend on whether we noticed in time. Wade raised the radio without taking his eyes off the trees. "Command, this is Team 2. Possible live voice contact north of Marker 7 near the old road. Advise all teams, hold grid and do not converge until we confirm direction." "Copy, Team 2. Keller looked at him. "Why wouldn't we move?" "Because we don't know where she is yet." "We can hear her." "I know what we can hear." His voice was flat, but there was something under it now. Not panic. Calculation. Lena rose slowly, one hand still on Koa's harness. He doesn't want that direction. Keller glanced between the dog and the trees like he was trying to decide which one made less sense. Then, faint and almost conversational, the voice drifted through the dark again. "Please." Keller said, "That's her." Wade turns to all three of us. No one answers until we have visual confirmation. No one breaks line. We move controlled and we move together. Understood? There are procedures that sound overly cautious until the night gives you a reason for them. In an ordinary search, answering a subject helps orient them, calm them, keep them talking. But distance lies in the woods. So do gullies. Sound rolls, slips, and comes back wearing the wrong shape. Wade knew that. I knew that. Still, hearing a kid call for help and refusing to answer went against the body. Keller hesitated half a second before nodding. Lena said, "Understood." Wade looked at me. "Copy," I said. He turned back toward the old road and said, "We go slow." We stepped off the maintained trail and onto the old fire road with Koa resisting every foot. The trees closed around us almost immediately. The roadbed swallowed light instead of reflecting it. Brush leaned in from both sides, and the trunks ahead looked taller and closer together than they had from the trail. Leaves muffled from our steps, but not enough. Every moment felt too loud, as if the woods were listening with more attention than they should. We had gone maybe 40 yards when I saw the first pale shape. At the time, I thought it was bark. A dead standing oak leaned over the road ahead, silver gray where its outer skin had peeled away. My beam passed over a pale vertical strip maybe 8 feet off the ground, then moved on. I took 2 more steps before my brain tugged me backward. I stopped and put the light back. The tree was there. The branch crotch was there. The pale shape wasn't. For a second, I told myself it was angle. Just angle, fatigue, and bad light making a fool of me. Then, somewhere deeper in the trees, off to our right, the girl's voice said, much closer than before, "Don't leave me here." Keller made a sound in his throat and half turned toward it. Wade caught the back of his vest. "Hold the line. That was right there. I know where it sounded." Lena had both hands on Koa now. The dog was no longer whining. He'd gone dead silent. Body locked so tight the muscles in his shoulders trembled under his coat. He wasn't looking toward the voice. He was staring upslope into the trees to our left. Lips lifted just enough to show the edges of his teeth. I moved my light that way and saw nothing but trunks, stripped branches, and black seams between them. Wade keyed the radio. "Command, Team 2 entering North Service Road. Possible subject voice contact, inconsistent with canine behavior. Mark our position and hold all teams to grid." Static. Then, "Copy, Team 2. Team 4 reports no contact east sector. Team 1 circling lower trail loop." The normality of the dispatcher's voice helped for about 2 seconds. Then Emma called again. This time from ahead of us, farther down the road. "Please, I can't walk." Keller looked back at Wade. "We have to answer her." "No." "What if she thinks we can't hear her?" Wade's tone never changed. "What if something else wants to know exactly where we are?" Keller stared at him as if he wanted to argue. But there are only so many ways to push against a sentence like that, when the dog beside you looks ready to break itself getting away. We kept moving. Slow, controlled, lights scanning, not just ahead, but up and wide. The road dipped and narrowed. Leaf mold swallowed the last sign of gravel. Here and there, old cut stumps bulged from the ground like rotted teeth. The air had turned colder without warning, enough that I could feel it in my sinuses every time I breathed. After another 50 yards, Koa stopped again. This time he didn't brace backward. He swung hard left off the road, nearly pulling Lena with him, and started growling into a shallow drainage gully choked with brush and wind-thrown limbs. We all stopped. "What is it?" Wade asked. Lena shook her head. "He's got scent. Strong." "Emma?" She didn't answer. Koa lunged once into the dark and then recoiled so violently he nearly flipped his own harness. The growl broke into a sharp, panicked bark I had never heard from him before. My light swept across the gully. At first, I saw only deadfall and the pale underside of leaves. And then I found what had set him off. Something was crouched beneath the root ball of an overturned tree on the far side of the cut. It was so still that my brain tried to make it wood. Then the beam found what should have been a shoulder and kept going down, reaching too far before it found what should have been a shoulder. The thing folded backward into the dark with a speed so smooth it barely registered as motion. Not running, not scrambling. Just there, then withdrawn. Keller sucked in air so hard I heard it. What the hell was that? No one answered. Koa was losing control now, barking in savage bursts and trying to back out of his harness at the same time. Lena fought to keep the line clear of her legs. Wade said, "Back to the road. Now. Then Emma's voice came from the gully itself. Not ahead of us, not farther away. Right there beneath the uprooted tree. Please. Every hair on my arms lifted under my jacket. Because it was her voice. Same age, same strain, same breathless edge. But close up. Something in it was wrong in a way distance had hidden. The timing lagged half a beat behind where fear should have lived. It sounded like something choosing where to put the panic instead of feeling it. Wade held his light on the root ball and said clearly, "Visual first." No one moved. No one answered. After 5 long seconds, he said, "Back." We retreated to the road without turning our backs on the gully. Koa kept barking until we reached the center of the track, then stopped abruptly and pressed so hard against Lena's leg he was practically trying to climb her. Wade keyed his radio again. "Command, Team 2. I need Team 1 redirected to our last confirmed sign near Marker 7. Do not move anyone onto the North Service Road without my say. Repeat, do not put anyone on this road yet." A pause. "Copy, Team 2. What do you have?" Wade looked at me, then Lena, and then finally said, "Unconfirmed visual. Possible human mimic source. Keep that internal until we know what we're saying." Keller stared at him. Human mimic source? Wade ignored him. That was the first moment I understood he had a category in his head for this kind of impossible, even if he had no intention of naming it. We pulled back another 20 yards to where the road widened around an old turnaround and regrouped. "What did you see?" Keller asked me. "A pale shape." "That's not an answer." "It's the one I have." Lena was crouched beside Koa, checking his pupils with her light. The dog's chest was heaving. He wouldn't look at the woods now, just kept his face turned toward the road behind us, as if the only thing left in him was the need to leave. "I'm taking him out," she said. Wade nodded at once. We turned around and started back. For the first 100 yards, nothing followed. No voice, no movement. Just 4 people and 1 half-panicked dog moving too carefully through cold timber. Then, behind us and off to the right, something said, "Keller." All 4 of us stopped at once. Keller went pale under his headlamp. The voice had been close. Adult male this time. Not Emma. It sounded enough like Wade to land before your mind could question it. Wade didn't turn around. "Move." "Keller," the voice said again, slightly farther back. Same clipped cadence Wade used on training days. Keller whispered, "That was you." "I know what I sound like. Move." We moved. No one spoke the rest of the way back to Marker 7. The moment Koa's paws hit the maintained trail, some of the panic left him. Not all of it, but enough that he stopped choking himself on the harness. Lena led him back toward the command with a deputy escorting her. Wade, Keller, and I stayed. Team 1 had reached the last verified area near Marker 7 and was working a tight pattern where the old road split from the trail. One of them, a ranger named Paulson, had found Emma's phone about 15 feet off the maintained path in a bed of leaves near a cedar thicket. Screen cracked, battery dead. There was also a scrape of gray fabric caught on a low branch, and one partial shoe impression in soft mud leading away from the trail and not toward the road we had just come from. Wade knelt beside the print under 3 converging lights. "That's her," he said. How do you know? Keller asked. Because it's small, fresh, and she was wearing trail runners. He stood and looked toward the old service road, now just a dark break in the trees beyond our light. The voice has been pulling us wrong. There it was, out loud. Not suspicion anymore. Fact. Every call we heard from the road had moved us away from Emma's last real sign, not toward it. Wade radioed command and shifted the search. No one said why over open channel. Just that Team 2 had reassessed direction, and we were now following probable subject travel off the main trail toward a low drainage basin northeast of Marker 7. More people arrived, more lights, another dog team that got as far as the cedar line before the bloodhound planted herself and refused to take another step. That got everyone's attention, even the ones who hadn't seen what we had. Searches are organized, but they're also full of private doubts. Nobody wants to be the first one to say something irrational. So what happens instead is a slow collective adjustment. A silence growing around certain facts because everyone has noticed them, but no one wants to give them a name. That was the mood now. Nobody said monster. Nobody said creature. Nobody said anything at all about voices. But nobody answered the woods after that. We moved into the drainage basin in a staggered line. The ground fell away under loose leaves and black roots. Deadfall made walls out of dark. Our lights caught white flashes of stone, snapped branches, stripped birch. Every one of them made my shoulders tighten before my brain sorted it out. We found Emma's second shoe near the lip of a shallow drop, snagged between two rocks. Below that, the basin opened into a washout maybe 30 yards across, where spring runoff had torn through the hillside years earlier, and left behind a mess of snapped saplings, old logs, and pockets of black standing water. That was where we found the handprint. Not on the ground, on the side of a dead standing trunk about 7 feet up. 5 long marks pressed into wet moss and mud. Not claw gouges, not bear rake, not the spread of an animal paw, a hand shape, only too narrow, too long in the fingers, and just slightly wrong in the spacing. As if whatever had laid it there understood the general idea of a hand better than the structure. Paulson looked at it for a long time and said nothing. Keller whispered, "Jesus Christ." Wade keyed his radio and asked command to move EMS closer. That told me more than his face did. He thought we were about to find her. We just didn't know in what condition. The basin bent left around a cluster of fallen timber. The smell changed there. Wet earth, old water, leaf mold, and beneath it something sharper. Human sweat gone cold, stress, the stale, close smell of someone who has been lying in one place too long. I saw Wade catch it at the same moment I did. He lifted one hand. Everybody froze. No one had to be told to listen. At first there was only the forest, a little water moving, branches ticking, someone's radio hissing softly against the jacket. And then, from somewhere ahead and low to the ground, came a sound so small I nearly missed it. Not a word, a sob trying not to become one. Wade moved first, not fast, just immediate. We climbed over the deadfall and found her in the hollow beneath it. Emma Voss was wedged under a lattice of fallen limbs and half-rotted logs where the washout had carved a shallow shelter into the earth. Her face was white with cold and streaked with dirt. One side of her forehead was swollen. Her left ankle lay at a wrong angle inside a torn sneaker. She had pulled leaves and broken brush around herself, the way hurt people sometimes do when instinct drops them back to something older and smaller. Hide, hold heat, stay quiet. For one terrible second, I thought she was unconscious, and then her eyes moved. I have never been so relieved to see fear in another human face. "Emma?" Wade said, kneeling at the edge of the deadfall. "My name is Wade. I'm from Search and Rescue. You understand me?" Her mouth worked before sound came out. When it did, it was barely air. "You took too long." Wade's face changed to just a fraction. "We're here now." Behind me, somebody was already calling the medics in. I crouched lower and angled my light away from her eyes. Up close, she looked worse than I'd first thought. Lips blue at the edges, fingernails packed with dirt, thin scratches across her wrists and neck from brush, panic, or both. And then she looked past Wade and straight at me. Her eyes widened. "Don't let it hear you," she whispered. No one spoke. Wade said gently, "Emma, you're safe now." She shook her head once, not dramatic, not panicked, certain. "No," she said. "It stays where the lights aren't." Something moved above us. Just one soft shift of weight in the timber overhead. Every beam in the basin snapped upward at once. Nothing. Only crossing branches and the black ribs of trees leaning over the washout. But Emma had already started crying without sound, tears slipping sideways into her hair. Wade leaned closer. "Emma, listen to me. Did you hear us calling for you?" She stared at him as if she hadn't understood the question. Then she swallowed and said, "At first." His jaw tightened. "At first?" She nodded. "I heard you on the trail. I yelled back." Her voice shook harder now. "Then it yelled back too." Nobody in the basin moved. Emma looked from face to face, searching for the expression that would tell her we understood. "It kept answering me," she said. "Sometimes like me, sometimes like you. One time it sounded like my mom." Her breath hitched. I stopped yelling because it got closer every time I did. Behind us, further up the slope, a girl's voice called for help. Every person in the basin locked in place. Same age, same strain, same voice. Emma clamped both hands over her mouth and made a strangled sound against her palms. Wade didn't even look up this time. Extract now. The basin broke into motion. Medic bags came forward. A thermal wrap snapped open. Paulson and I cut and lifted branches while Keller held a light with shaking hands and tried very hard not to look beyond the center of the beam. From higher on the slope, Emma's voice called again. "Please, I'm here." Then from farther left, "Wade?" Then from behind us and much lower than it should have been, "Don't leave me here." I understood something then that made all of it worse. It wasn't panicking. It wasn't angry. It was adjusting position, trying angles, testing what worked. We got Emma onto a leader in under 4 minutes, though it felt much longer. The medics wrapped her, splintered the ankle as best they could, checked pupils, checked airway, got heat packs around her core. The whole time the woods kept throwing voices at us, never overlapping, never frantic, just one at a time, each from a different place, each close enough to imagine a person just beyond the next line of trees, if you were foolish enough to go looking. The first stretch out of the basin was the worst because we had to climb. 2 on the front of the leader, 2 on the back, everyone else screening with lights and radios and sidearms they all knew were mostly there for comfort. I took rear left. Emma was half conscious by then. Once, as we lifted over a slick trunk, she grabbed my sleeve with surprising strength and whispered, "Don't let it get above us." I looked up before I could stop myself. That was when I saw it clearly for the first time. It was halfway up a leaning pine, maybe 30 yards off our right flank. Not perched, not standing, clinging. Its limbs wrapped around the trunk in a way that made no natural sense. Too much length arranged at the wrong points. Pale skin or something like it stretched tight over a frame that seemed built for folding rather than standing. Its head angled down toward us. No eye shine, no expression I could read. Just a white shape holding perfectly still while the branches around it moved in the wind. If it had been on the ground, some part of my mind might have tried to make it a human for another second or two. But up there, arranged like that, it had nowhere human left to hide. My light hid it for maybe a half a second. It slipped behind the trunk so quickly it seemed to vanish through solid wood. Right side, I shouted. Every beam swung. Nothing. Only bark, black limbs, and empty cold air. "Keep moving," Wade snapped. We did. No one challenged what I'd seen. That was almost worse than disbelief. It meant the night had finally crossed the point where seeing it felt more reasonable than denying it. About 50 yards from the maintained trail, Keller broke. Not physically, not all the way, but he made the mistake the woods had been trying to wring out of one of us for the last hour. From somewhere ahead, just beyond our lights, Wade's voice said, "This way." Perfect. Same flat tone, same impatience. Except the real Wade was 20 feet to my left with both hands under the front of the leader. Keller answered before thought could catch up. "Got it." He stepped once offline toward the dark. That was all. One step. And then Paulson caught his pack strap, yanked him backward so hard he lost his footing and went down to one knee. At the same moment, something pale crossed between the 2 trees ahead of where we'd been looking. Low, fast, silent. Not charging us, repositioning. Keller made a sound I hope I never hear from another grown man again. Not a scream. Something smaller and more helpless than that. "Stay in line," Wade barked. We hauled Keller up and kept moving. The maintained trail appeared at last like something unreal, flat, familiar, almost civilized in the middle of all this timber. Beyond it, through the trees, I could see the diffuse wash of command lights spilling weakly into the forest. We were maybe 2 minutes from the lot when the woods behind us went completely quiet. No voices, no branch noise, nothing. Emma stirred on the leader. In a cracked whisper, she said, "It does that when it's close." I turned before I wanted to. There was a gap in the trees behind us where the trail curved between 2 huge trunks before dropping back toward the basin. Something pale was standing there. Not rushing, not crouched. Standing. Too tall and too narrow. Arms hanging with the wrong weight, head bent slightly as if listening. At that distance, the details blurred, but the whiteness of it was unmistakable. Not bright, not glowing, just the dead, bloodless color of something that had never belonged under open sky. It was holding one of the reflective trail markers in its hand. I knew that because, when my beam hit it, the little square flashed silver. Then it lifted the marker to the side of its face, and in Emma's voice, soft as breath, it said, "Wait." The men at the front of the leader didn't slow. If anything, they sped up. The command lights widened through the trees. Somebody at the base had seen our beams and was shouting, asking if we had her, asking what we needed. I looked back once more just before we broke clear of the woods. The thing was gone. Not running away, not hiding. Gone in the way a hand disappears when a person inside the puppet lets the shape collapse. The lot of lights hit us hard and flat. Deputies came running. EMS took over. Blankets, questions, oxygen. The heated ambulance compartment. The ordinary language of rescue rushed in so fast it almost made the last 2 hours feel impossible. Almost. Emma survived. Hypothermia, concussion, broken ankle, dehydration. She spent 2 nights in the hospital and another week at home before deputies took a formal follow-up statement anyone was willing to put on paper. Most of what she said got translated into safer language. Disorientation, auditory confusion, trauma response, exposure-related distress. The usual words people use when reality comes back wrong and nobody wants to be the first one to admit it. Wade filed his report with more omissions than I'd ever seen from him. Lena never brought Koa back to Black Pine. As for me, I kept going out on calls. What else do you do? People still get lost. Kids still wander off. Old men still miss their turns in the woods during deer season. The work doesn't stop because one patch of forest teaches you something you didn't want to know. But I do things differently now. I don't answer voices in the dark unless I can see the mouth they came from. I don't follow distress calls uphill when the dogs want downhill. And I never let the line stretch so far that I can't count every light through the trees. A month after Emma was found, Wade called me and asked if I wanted to know one more thing that hadn't made it into the report. I said yes, though I'm not sure why. He told me the hospital social worker had asked Emma, gently, what frightened her most while she was hiding under the deadfall. Not the fall, not the cold, not the dark. Emma had thought about it for a long time before answering. Then she said the worst part was that after a while, it stopped copying her voice first. It started copying ours. And sometimes when the woods are quiet and the trailhead bends out of sight, I still think about what that means. It means it listened. It means it learned the difference between a lost girl calling for help and the people who came looking for her. And it means that somewhere in Black Pine State Forest, there's something pale in the trees that knows exactly what human beings sound like when they think they're close enough to save each other. If this story pulled you in, subscribe for more eerie tales every week. And let me know in the comments. Would you have responded if someone called your name in the dark? Good night.